Joining me today, I have Stefan Epp-Koop. He is the Senior Manager of Humanitarian Programming at Canadian Foodgrains Bank, and you are right out of here in Winnipeg. Stefan, thank you for joining me.
It's great to be here with you today.
Absolutely. Before we get into what today is, I would love to know, what is your role at Canadian Foodgrains Bank? What do you do?
Sure. So I sort of oversee our humanitarian programming, which means that the food assistance that we're providing to people who are hungry around the world. We are operating right in any given year in 15 to 20 countries providing food assistance. And so I work with our team that's providing that, supporting that work across the globe.
Fantastic. Are there people, farmers right here in Manitoba that are part of this whole thing?
Absolutely. Manitoba has always been a great support base for the Canadian Foodgrains Bank and for the work of our members and their partners as they're doing this programming. And there are farmers who are growing crops. There's people donating to Canadian Foodgrains Bank. And so, yeah, Manitoba is a really core part of our identity as an organization.
Here at CHVN, we know that so many of our listeners are literally some of the most generous people on this planet. So I'm really glad to hear that you get that overflow as well.
Absolutely. No, it's remarkable the generosity of Manitobans and of farmers who are, right since Foodgrains Bank was founded in 1983, farmers have been, and Manitoban farmers in particular, have been really big supporters of the work that we do.
That's fantastic. Today is World Humanitarian Day. What should people know about this?
So World Humanitarian Day has been commemorated for about 20 years now, and it's a day to do a couple of things. One is to remember people who have been killed and injured while doing humanitarian work, providing life-saving assistance to others. And it's also to remember the people who continue to every day now provide that life-saving support for others, often at great risk to themselves. So it's a chance to celebrate the work of people who are, who are bravely and creatively and courageously, doing this work on behalf of others, and then also to commemorate, sadly, those who have lost their lives in doing so.
Yeah, that brings me to a question. What is work like for humanitarian workers in 2025? What does that look like?
2025 is right now looking like the most dangerous year that there ever has been for humanitarian workers. There's been over 260 humanitarian workers killed this year. There were 380 killed last year, which was the record at that point. It is, I say, increasingly difficult in many of the places where we're working for people to provide assistance safely. And I think one of the key reasons for that is the number of conflicts that are happening around the globe. About 3/4 of the humanitarian assistance, the food assistance we provide, are to people in conflict zones or fleeing from conflict zones. And so increasingly people are providing assistance in dangerous places, but then also contexts where the protections that maybe existed before for humanitarian workers are not being respected. So people are at a greater risk than they were in the past to provide this assistance to others.
I was going to say, could you even explain why on earth? I mean, in my mind, these are people helping people. Why would they be
Absolutely.
at risk? But I mean, you did touch on it a little bit. There were protections in place that are being dismissed now. Is it also the fact that they're just in conflict zones? Is there even more to that?
I mean, partially that is just being, yeah, if you're close to the front lines, there is a risk there. And we've had this year one of our partners' offices were experienced shelling, not because they were targeted necessarily, but because they were in this community where two sides were fighting. We see increasing suspicion of humanitarian workers trying to provide aid. People wondering, are you providing aid to the other side, or to civilians on the other side? And so people being detained, people being experiencing threats. We see in some places we see sort of violence within communities, and so as humanitarian responders, they are sort of caught in the middle. So part of it is being in places that are inherently or struggling with violence, and part of it is that people are being targeted because they are providing assistance to others.
Wow. For our listeners, it's definitely a reminder to pray for those that are helping others, around the
Absolutely.
world.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah.
think this is, something, to think about all the time, but certainly on this day to keep in your prayers those who are helping others. I've met a lot of people in my travels and through my work here at Foodgrains Bank who have undertaken tremendous sacrifices to help other people. They, in some cases, are living away from their families for weeks or months at a time. They experience the threat or actual physical violence. We know increasingly of the toll on mental health, of the trauma that people experience when doing humanitarian work. And certainly we do what we can to support our partners and their staff as they are doing this work, but we know that it's incredibly difficult and challenging, and people are making sacrifices to do it. But it's also, people talk a lot about the importance of the work that they do and how it's essential, how it's part of living their faith, how it's part of living their commitment to their neighbors. And it really comes through that people really care strongly about others, and are giving a lot to ensure that people who are most in need in the world are able to get food. So yeah, it's always an inspiration.
Absolutely. Humanitarians are beyond some of the most courageous people on the planet, my opinion. Um, when it comes to our listeners as well, if somebody is thinking, yeah, I want to help out, how can people join in what Canadian Food Grain Banks is doing?
Sure. Well, we talked about praying already. We encourage people to pray for people, both people who are hungry and also people who are helping those who are hungry. People are welcome to donate as well and support the work of Foodgrains Bank and our member organizations. And so that foodgrainsbank.ca is our website, and you can find out more about that there. And you can also learn more about the kinds of work that Foodgrains Bank is supporting and the different kinds of projects and other ways to get involved while you're there.
Are there very specific areas right now that are the highest where Food Grain Banks is really focused on?
Well, if you go to the website, you'll see that there's a special page for Sudan, and that's because the crisis in Sudan remains certainly one of the worst in the world in terms of the number of people. It's by far the worst in the world currently, and we're looking to support more programming in Sudan to respond to the hunger that's experienced there. I had a chance to visit with people who were displaced from that conflict a few months ago, and hearing people tell stories of fleeing their homes with you know literally nothing and trying to restart a life somewhere else, leaving a comfortable home, but having to leave because of the violence to try and find safety. So we're trying to respond there, but certainly we are also trying to respond through our members around the world. We have programming happening right now in, as I said, probably 15 to 20 countries doing food assistance, and probably 30 to 40 countries overall. So there's lots of work that's happening in lots of places. There's certainly growing need in the world, and through our members, we're able to be in many of those contexts.
Now, working for an organization like this, which is super helpful, but then going somewhere, I would think it would take your work to a whole new level. What was, I would say, your biggest takeaway from your trip to Sudan?
So I would say it's sadly easy sometimes when you're sitting here in Winnipeg to sort of hide behind the computer screen and hide behind the numbers, and it becomes facts and figures and reports. And I read a lot of reports and a lot of really bad news, but it's a completely different thing to put a face and a name and a story to those reports. And I mean, to recognize then that one face and name and story is multiplied a million times, but that it's about the father who has lost hope and can't feed his family. It's about the um, people who have been taken. I was visiting it in South Sudan, but visiting Sudanese refugees there. So in South Sudan, the people who had almost were collecting firewood to try and eke out a living, and then took in 15 people who had fled to their country because there was nowhere else for them to go. Like, these are these are the stories that are behind those numbers. And I would say also in talking to the staff who are delivering that programming and hearing about their experience in doing that, and hearing about being away from their homes, being away from family, experiencing the challenges of operating in a complicated place, um, and also the fact that I went and I heard those stories for a few days, and they hear those stories every day, and recognizing that that's very hard, that is challenging to continually live through that and experience that and hear about that. And so recognizing that they the inspiring work that they're doing to respond to those people who are experiencing that need as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing some of your experience with us. We really appreciate it. And we're going to let everybody know about World Humanitarian Day and how they can help out as well. Thank you, Stefan.
Yeah, thanks so much. Great to be with you today.